in there. I always like to start with a little quote. This one is from Horace Nelson Jackson. Probably never heard about him, but he was the first person to cross the United States with a car. And he said, do not believe you can do today's job with yesterday's method and be in business tomorrow. We're all going through a lot of change, and the question is, how do we adopt it? I think the main theme of this presentation you will see is that there's not one way to get there. There's multiple ways, and you're not all starting from the same point. You're not going to all end in the same place. Therefore, what we're looking to do for you is actually trace that road with you and hopefully make it yours and make it successful. So, disclaimer, everything that has a name that looks like SAP belongs to SAP. We don't want to be in legal trouble. So the content of what we're going to go through today really is, first, what's the context, where are we coming from? And then the three main steps are how do we envision your future? How do we get there, and what can you do today to make that a reality? You will see that during the presentation there's a lot of links. I will do my best to show you how to get the information, how to use SAP's content the best way. But don't bother trying to write down all the links. Chloe will be sending you the presentation at the end so that you can take the time to go through them. Okay, so not sure if everybody knows about us, but we're Bluefin. We're a Mindtree company. We're a leader in the digital transformation with SAP HANA. We have actually 1,700 plus SAP dedicated consultants. And we've been through more than 100 HANA engagements with a lot of success, especially the one we really care about, which is the customer recommendations and the customer recognition. So we have the SAP awards, and we are really available globally to help you do your advisory, delivery, and support projects. What we're going to talk about today is the result of two things. The first is discovery workshops and roadmap workshops that we've done. I'm going to take examples of companies I cannot name, but the first one was an S/4HANA roadmap that we did for a US pharmaceutical company. Their goal was to reduce end-user disruption, which is interesting because SAP is all about digital transformation and revolution. At the same time, a lot of customers don't want any disruption. We also do a lot of Suite on HANA roadmaps. So for certain people, certain organizations, S/4HANA is a big step. Therefore, we might want to choose to go to Suite on HANA. So we just completed the project with the US oil and gas company, trying to build a business case. And for them, the goal was to reduce the total cost of ownership. And actually, for some other organizations, the priority is to get the best out of their ERP. And therefore use HANA in the analytics side. So we did the food and beverage organization where we worked with them throughout a year to develop the vision, start the organization transformation, and then start the self-service BI, which is where we are today. So those are the roadmaps exercises we did. Of course, this is coming also from a lot of experience in the implementation side. So I'm going to draw from a 1511 Greenfield upgrade. This one was an implementation in the Middle East. It's about to go live in May. We also have an S/4HANA 1610 Greenfield implementation that's about to go live in 2 weeks. We did an upgrade from 1511 to 1610 for a Chinese customer, and then a Suite on HANA implementation for a transportation company. This one was very interesting because the benefit that SAP is claiming, this one really we could measure 80% improvement. That was very significant, and that was coming from a lot of collaboration with the customer. So it was a very exciting project. So again, this is not just coming from roadmap exercises, but it's also drawing from our experience in the implementation and delivery of those projects as well. So what does that mean for you? Well, SAP announced, I don't know if you remember that, at Sapphire in 2015, the big revolution of S4HANA. Coming from the ERP world, you see that was a jump of about 11 years. And today, when we look around the horizon of the SAP organization, well, not everybody has implemented. Actually, I think it's about 10% where we are today. And this is, to me, this is because it's simply a big step. It takes a little time to get there. And actually, it took time for SAP as well to get there. If you look at the real HANA journey that SAP took, the HANA database itself was available in 2011, and the first S4HANA ready for prime time release was 1511. A little sidebar before I go into details here. The release names, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. 1511 means 15 is 2015 and 11 for November. So it was available at the end of 2015. So it took them about 4+ years to get there, and they expect people to get there very fast. Of course, this is not happening that fast. There was a lot of intermediate steps. First, we had the accelerators, like the COPA accelerator or Finance and Controlling accelerator that had like a sidebar. And then we had a lot of those other intermediate steps, and I will go into the details there. But there's also more coming with the public cloud, with 1610 and BW for HANA. So actually, as you can see, there's not one HANA, but there's a dozen of them. And the question is, which one is the best for you? So we can go slightly over some of those, but Suite on HANA is still an option. This is when you have your SAP ERP that's currently running on any database. Most probably it's going to be an Oracle database. And you're going to swap this database with the HANA database. So this is, some people call it lift and shift. And the goal is to really get performance, or this is also sometimes a strategic choice to say, okay, we're going to start with that, get our feet wet with HANA, get some of the benefits that you can activate with the Switch framework, which is optimization of the code based on the availability of HANA. But those are, again, improvements, marginal improvements. Surprisingly as well, some of the scenarios we've seen is that in most cases, the performance is better, but we also had some transactions that actually are not performing as well. A little trick that we use as well here is that before you do the Suite on HANA, you have to actually run a performance test, so that when you are on the Business Suite on HANA, when customer says, well, this is not behaving as you said it would, we actually now run a second performance test, and we show that there's improvement in 10, 20%, sometimes more, but there's always a difference between expectation and what people feel. So it's still a very interesting choice. Simple Finance was SAP's start to assuming that we have a HANA, what can we do in the code to make it run better? This is where, and that was done in multiple steps. The first one was the add-on that was called Simple Finance. Then we had 1503 and 1605. Those are not upgradable to S4HANA. There's a transition path. So I would not recommend you to go there. If your goal is to get the universal ledger, you want to go to S4HANA 1511 or 1610, most probably here. But when it was available, the key benefits were improvement in FP&A, collaborative finance, accounting, financial close, risk and compliance, treasury. What was interesting is the availability of it as an add-on, but that was a strategy that was really making sense 2 years ago, which is not really the case anymore. There's better ways to get there if that's what you're looking for. Of course, now we have S4HANA. There's two major releases right now, 1511, 1610. 1511 was really a finance-driven release with the universal journal and replacement of tables to views. 1610 is the first one that goes beyond just finance, including logistics and materials, for instance. Both of them, though, have a lot of Fiori apps. Of course, 1610 has a lot more, and integration with the Ray-Ban SuccessFactors. So To me, 1511 was really the first one that was ready for the market. 1610 is really now the one that we recommend. It's pretty stable, lots of new features, also benefit for a broader part of the organization. Now, this is how SAP is presenting what's called the digital core, and I'm going to spend a little minute on this just for you to understand how to read this, because there's a lot of tricks. So first is the dark blue, what's called the digital core. This is what you get when you purchase S/4HANA on-premise enterprise edition for enterprise management. So you get the traditional finance, accounting, controlling, time recording, procurement and sourcing. So all of those dark blue you get by default. Now, as always, in the devil is in the detail. There's a little asterisk here, which is compatibility scope, which is interesting, right? What does that really mean? Well, it means it's not always there. So for instance, in product here, you can see which is a lighter shade. It means you need more license to get there. So financial planning analysis is a Fiori app that's very interesting. Accounting financial close, those are interesting apps. Just be careful that you may require additional licenses in this lighter blue version, which is a little confusing because they will be on the S/4HANA platform, as opposed to the gray here, which is obviously separated. This is where you go into SuccessFactors, Ariba, Hybris. So those are obviously separate tools with separate release schemes and with separate licenses. So just be careful. The dark blue is what you get as part of enterprise management. The lighter blue, that's called products, require licenses, but they will be in the S4 platform. The other ones that are part of the suite are separate tools with separate licenses and separate release that require integration. Okay, so just this is how SAP is going to present more and more the features and products, and this is how to read this. Public cloud, I'm not sure everybody's aware of this, but so you can have your on-premise license and you can have it on-premise, but you can also have a private cloud. That's what people usually know. There is also a public cloud version, which is where you get a monthly subscription. You don't have to care about your IT investment at all. You don't need any HANA box. You rent it. So the advantage here is you don't really have to care about the background. And so if your IT is limited in terms of availability or skill set, or that could also be a strategic move. We're considering that with a customer which is more in the startup mode, and they want to grow as fast as possible. So therefore, their IT is focusing on other things than this. And for them, that's also a very nice way to convert their capital expense into an operational expense because they're really tight on capital against the startup. But the functional coverage is interesting for some scenarios and not all of them. This is where you have to dig into the features and functionalities. But if you have a smaller business unit that is focusing on just requires the basic finance parts or non-core processes. So you have, for instance, may have a manufacturing organization and there's this small division that does servicing. Well, you might want to have a separate ERP for them, and which is where we go into what's called the two-tier ERP, where small business units may have their own single ERP, and then you integrate back into the main ERP. That's usually done with some kind of a QuickBooks. And now you can do that inside the SAP world, and that makes it a lot easier to integrate and to have transitioning people from the small entity to the big entity, because it will be the same system after all. So very interesting proposition here. Doesn't fit everybody, but one that you might want to consider in some cases. Central finance. Now this is one I really like for different reasons. The first one is that some organizations are just very complex and they're not upgradable. You might have an SAP ERP 460 non-Unicode. You might have 8 or 10 of them, and upgrading 8 or 10 of them is just very complicated and expensive and slow and with limited benefits. So what you could do in that case, you could have an instance that you, either an existing one that you convert to S/4HANA, or a new instance that you set up. So central finance is really just a deployment solution. It's going to be your 1610 or 1511 that you deploy, but the connection of everything makes it very interesting. Some people usually ask me, so well, how does that compare to BW? Because I could do that with a BW or with a BPC for just consolidation. The difference here is that you have a full ERP, so you recreate your transactions automatically from your local system into your central system. So you have the granularity of all the documents, and you can run additional processes. So those processes or those scenarios are listed here. The first one is called just central reporting. You can get real-time visibility across your organization because your BW requires batch processing. That's usually nightly or weekly. Same for your BPC, that might even be just monthly. There's no aggregation of data, so once you really want to go down to the right level to close your books, you will have the document itself. And then you can leverage now your Fiori Apps. So imagine you enter your purchase order or your accounts payables at the local level. Automatically at the central level, you can use your cash applications to see where you are. So that's a very interesting one. And it's limiting your disruption because you don't change any of the local processes if you don't want to, or you can do this gradually. Very interesting proposition here. That's just reporting, though. The next step is central processing. So if you have shared services, accounts payables, receivables, cash management, payroll consolidation, overhead management, those can be done centrally. It's tricky, though, because if as of now, the integration from local to central is working very nicely, but the way back is not really working in all cases. And actually, the question really is, well, do you really want it? And this is where you have to choose strategically which one is my system of record. Because if I create a purchase order in my local system and then I receive the money, where do I receive the money? Do I receive it in the local system or in the central system? And this is where you have to figure out what's your process, really. So a little bit more work there, but the benefits would be really incredible if you have, again, a certain number of ERP systems, SAP, non-SAP. Now you can really start benefiting from your shared services as opposed to, for instance, having to connect to multiple systems to do the same process. Landscape transformation is also very interesting. This is like a tactical step where you currently have multiple systems, and then you upgrade some of them into the central system. We actually creating a proposal right now for a customer that wants to do this over a certain period, multiple years, and start with a small division, have this template, and then use central finance to integrate the large one, and then gradually shift from the old to the new one, maybe by just starting with finance, for instance, and then maybe logistics or things like that. So interesting proposition here if you want to do a phased approach to your transformation. How do I choose? Suite on HANA, S/4HANA, this is part of the roadmap exercise that we do. We always take a step back and what makes sense for you is a good question. And what is very interesting is that we have the same process for every one of our customers, and the result is always different. Again, you start from a different, from initial position that's different. Your priorities might be different, and therefore the output is always different. So where does it make sense to go Suite on HANA? Well, in terms of people, it's going to be the same system. You just change the database. Imagine you have your laptop and you switch from the old hard drives to the solid state hard drives. There's no change. It's still the same operating system. Everything is still the same, except it's a little faster, or actually sometimes significantly faster. Which means that the functional team is barely involved in this project. It's really a technical project. You don't have change management. On the downside, because you're not changing a lot, you don't get a lot of new things. That makes sense, right? So on the people side, again, S/4HANA, well, why would you go there? This is where you want to improve and make a lot of changes in your organization. So you want new productivity, increase your productivity with new features, potential the self-service BI, and the Fiori Apps. So that is the key. However, because you're changing, you need training and testing for the business and for IT, and you need some change management. And that actually is becoming a large part of our project, much more than the system part. So in terms of processes, Suite on HANA is limiting a disruption. You can use it as a tactical move. So you first go to HANA, and then you have add-ons potentially, like Simple Finance or Advanced Analytics. And you can have reduced process times overall, right? For instance, you can have MRP run faster, and that could be, for some organizations, very important. However, we do not recommend that you go to the Simple Finance. So we mentioned that earlier. 1605 is being one of them. And Suite on HANA is not going to be supported by enough 2025, which means it's really a technical step if you were to do it today or between now and 2025. At the end of the day, you will have to go to S4HANA. So again, that could be something you want to do today, but you have to think long term. So going back to the examples we had for the pharmaceutical company I was mentioning, because they are FDA regulated, for them the testing part was very significant. Therefore, going for Suite on HANA and testing everything, and then maybe 5 years later go to S4HANA and retest everything was just way too expensive. It was much more interesting to bite the bullet and go directly to S4HANA and use what's called the compatibility mode. I will show you what it is later on. So why would you adopt S4HANA in terms of processes? Well, it's very simple. You have less business process steps. Some of them have been automated. Most of the transactions have been redesigned. So the business processes are changed significantly. You also enable a lot of real-time things like consolidation analytics, and you can include predictive, and it's beyond finance. This is where the business case is not just supported by the CFO, but you have to go to CEO level. Now, of course, you're changing a lot, so you can have significant business disruption, right? In terms of projects, Suite on HANA is basically a technical project. A lot of people are doing that lift and shift. Business barely knows about it. There might be a downtime for a weekend, and that's about it. Therefore, the project is going to be easier, and the technology is very stable. It's been there for a while now, so there's not a lot of risk there. However, when you will go to S4HANA, you have to, again, do another second project, so something to take into account. S4HANA, the project is not just technical. The functional piece is actually very significant, especially on the testing and redesign of business processes. However, the benefit is that it is going to be SAP's platform for the future. So once you do the big step to go S4HANA, let's say 1610, then the upgrades later down the road are going to be the same as you had before. It's going to change completely the backend, so it's an enablement for digital transformation. And there's also a significant database footprint. So when we do the sizing, there's something very interesting going on there. This is also the time when you usually rethink your data lifecycle. So there's a lot of good things that are happening here. But S4HANA might not be ready for you, though. Again, they're working on it. We'll talk about these industry solutions later on. But especially in the public sector, this is really not fully 100% yet there. I would like to stress that this really has to be considered on a case-by-case basis, because SAP is trying to grab some of the cool functionalities from industry and get them back into the core. Therefore, you might have some of those core things. So we'll go into the details a little later on about industry. You have to dig into the details. That's really the conclusion there. Okay. Now, this is where we started. This is where we want to go. We want to go to maybe S4HANA or Suite on HANA. We have evaluated the pros and cons. What can we do? What do I need to get there? And actually, SAP has given us a lot of information. And as usually with SAP, there's sometimes too much information. So we're going to go through some of them: the journey map, the white papers that are available, the roadmaps, the Activate, which is really key, and the Fiori catalog. I will go back and forth between the presentation and my browser to show you how to get there. Again, the links are going to be available at the bottom in the presentation, and Chloe will send you the presentation. But I want to make sure that you understand what's available so you can dig and make it yours, basically. So the first thing that SAP releases is those journey maps. Let me get there so they can see what it is. Oh, here it is. I didn't bring the journey map. Let me just bring the journey map. So coming up. So this is where the basic information is available about really the value for your organization, how to make it yours, how to adapt it to you, and then how to go into deploying. So this is the start of a lot of information. And I've collected some of those very interesting ones, especially the white papers. The Bible here is a simplification list, which is this document here. As you can see, it's 400 pages. It goes into a lot of details. This is really what we're using when we do assessments, when we do the discovery, and this is when we do impact analysis. This is when we do code remediation, and even the implementation. So this is really where most of the information you might need is, but that's 400 pages. So that's quite a lot. I really like this document as well, Transition Deployment Options, which I've downloaded here. Frank Wagner is a really good guy from SAP, and they have defined the migration path. Again, which ones you want. They have what's called here, they call it a constellation. So this is where we define what do I have today, where do I want to go, and how to get there. So very, very interesting document, lots of details there. And this one is digestible, it's 20 pages only. So very interesting information there, but it's pretty high level. So you have to kind of find the right balance between this transition deployment options, which is pretty high level, and the simplification list, which goes into a lot of details. Solution roadmap, so we were talking about those. Is it ready for my industry? Well, there's a whole list here, and it's by industry here. The key for S4HANA is actually to go into cross topics, and then you have the S4HANA part here. So tons of information, very interesting content, and then at least this is where we go when we want to understand what's available and what's coming. This is how to read it in case you want to do this. This is what's available as new features from 1610, and then basically every column is another year down the road. So the roadmap is 3 years ahead. Sometimes there's not a lot of information, like the new product modeling environment. I'm not sure what that is, but again, that's 3 years down the road, right? But it gives you kind of a high level, if there's a feature that you absolutely want, well, you can see more or less when it's going to come. And this is where we go into the details of industries. So a very interesting one as well. Activate roadmap. I would like to stress this very much. The S4HANA is the system, but the implementation methodology that goes with it is Activate. I've seen a lot of organizations trying to use the way they were doing before, but this is not your grandpa's ERP. You have to adopt the new way of doing it. And this is a more agile. You can see here the FibGet design has some loops that you can do. There's tons of content that's available inside the Activate roadmap. I will go into a little more detail later on about the process management, but there are documented, every single business process is documented. There's test cases. So there's the project plans. So it's extremely useful. For instance, again, we're about to deliver this project in the UK in 2 weeks. And when we did the test management, we took the document from SAP and we were able to reuse 80% of it. Okay, this step, now we just keep this one, it's not relevant for me. and I'm including one or two more. So why would you want to start your test preparation from scratch when 80% of it is available from SAP? It doesn't make any sense to me. So you have to go there. Now, it's a little tricky to get there. So this is the link, and this is what it shows you. It's kind of weird. But what I do, if you go to Solution Specific, and then you go to On-Premise, and there's Transition to S/4HANA. There's a lot of information. You see what I was just showing you. Using all those phases, you can see a lot of information here. Let me see, I didn't prepare that this time. I should have. But when we do the fit gap solution validation, procure to pay, and so there's tons of accelerators available for you to download, and you can see what they look like. It's extremely useful. We use that all the time. From there, the product availability matrix, you probably should know that one, but this is where we go and figure out, well, which enhancement pack do I have? What's the maintenance on it? So for instance, this one is supported until 2025. And then from there, what are my options? I can go to EHP 8 or Suite on HANA 1511, S4HANA 1511 or 1610, right? And if I go to EHP 8, again, 2025, right? That's the big deadline. Fiori Apps library. This is where, when you're considering moving to HANA, so this is the start screen. Make sure you click on All Apps for S4HANA. If you're considering just Suite on HANA, you can also do it, actually. You can go to All Apps and then filter. But it's very interesting. You could go and dig and say, well, what is the one I really care about? And then you can have, for each one of them, you have a screenshot and the benefits and some implementation information. So very useful website. ASOG, the SAP user group, for the folks in the UK, the UK and Ireland user group is also doing a lot of stuff that's very interesting. I would like to point you to the ASOG research website. There was a survey. I think there were about 600 respondents. So the question is, how do you compare to the other ones? Those two documents are very useful here. If you look into the details, so this one says this is the S4HANA version, and this one is the SAP HANA Cloud. So this one is about S4HANA itself. This is how you deploy it. So two interesting documents. The link I give you goes you there, and then in the links at the bottom you will see how to get to those two documents. But very interesting information when you want to compare yourself to the other and see where you are. Okay, so we talked about the SAP information and what's available out there, and there's a ton, as you can see. The question is, how do you make it yours? What is relevant for you? So this is where at Bluefin we have developed a lot of best practices. So we usually do this discovery workshop, which is half a day free. Yeah, you heard it, free. We do half a day. We sit with your functional, with your architect. And then we look at what's going on for you, where you are, where you want to go. So go through basically all those things we've seen together, and then start to have a very high-level Scrum and implementation plan, and trying to figure out what's the best for you. So we go through Suite on HANA, S4HANA, what's my BW strategy, what's my analytics strategy. So we work with you, and usually from there, we go and do a deep dive analysis, which is about 6 to 8 weeks. And what I love about this process is that we go with the exact same tools, and the output is very different because, again, every organization is different. So at the end of this analysis, you will have a business case, and you know exactly where you want to go within the next 3 to 5 years. So do you want to go S4HANA? Do you want to go S4HANA and then do some functional improvements? Do you want to just go Suite on HANA migration now, and then later on go to S4HANA and then have some functional improvements? So we lay it out for you and help you build a business case to prepare your investment. But the goal is to really make it yours. and reusing all of the tools we've been seeing earlier. So I would highly recommend that we work together on this, at least the discovery workshop, and see what works for you. One of the tools I really like is this adoption level. Where are you on S4HANA or HANA in general? You can do it both ways, but are you just evaluating it? Have you built your roadmap yet? Are you implementing already? Or are you already implemented and you're considering an upgrade or an extension? So there's different steps in the maturity, and not everybody is at the same step, and not everybody will go to 5 actually, or at least may not go to 5 at the same time. It may take a year, it may take 5 years, it may take 10. It really depends, and it doesn't matter as long as this is what your organization needs. The traditional ERP, I used to be an SAP developer, so I know exactly those modules. This is not how it's done anymore. Those modules were siloed. There were technical reasons why they were separated. This is not how we should work together anymore. We should work with end-to-end processes. So procure to pay, plan to product, order to cash, request to service, and then finance and HR being available for everybody here. The reason for this is there were a lot of limitations because of those silos. If you were doing some materials movement, you didn't always know what's going on sales department, for instance. And so you have to make them integrated. And this is really built into S4 from the get-go. I was showing you the Activate methodology. Every test is actually across modules. Therefore, you cannot have it separated by module. You have to have it by processes. And this, I've seen actually some organizational benefits for organizations that were not already aligned to those processes. Workload analysis. So this is a link, and this is the first thing you can do. You can do tomorrow, actually even today, depending on your time zone. But so I detailed for you in this document here, available, how to take a look at your usage, because it all matters. The real key is what are you doing with your system today. So this is an easy way to get into this transaction ST03N, and then take a look at which transactions were used over the last month or more. And then this is actually feeding into a lot more things. So that's the first thing you can do. It's free. Just get into your productive system and take an export of those transactions, and then we can help you with that. So I was showing you earlier the simplification list. What we did is convert the 400 pages into a database. And this database we have converted into an application where we could just enter a transaction and see what's going on. So for instance, XD03 display customer is not going to be available in 1610. You have to look at those 5 nodes. The reason why is because there's a customer vendor integration. There's a different way to handle master data for those. So we need to change the way we're handling master data, right? The good thing is that we also have this button here at the bottom where I can load the results from the workload analysis into my application, and it will already tell me, well, those are the applications that are not going to be available, and those are the things that can be done. So for instance, everything related to project system needs to go to CJ20N, or everything that's related to goods movement has to go to Migo. Those are easy things to do. Others may be a little more tricky, and this is exactly what it does for you, so prepare you for what needs to be done. The same export from the workload analysis you can use to go and do the S4HANA business scenario recommendations. This is a free service from SAP. Hey, you get something free from SAP. So go to this website, s4hana.com, click on Get Started Now, and then what you really need is put your information, your system ID, installation number, customer number, and it asks you to drag and drop a file or load a file. This file is what I told you to do in the workload analysis document. They do explain it here as well if you wanted instructions on how to get there, but that's basically it. And at the end of it, what do you get? Well, you get your own report. Oh, sorry. you get your report. There's a sample report available here. Give me 1 second to get there. Next slide, yeah. And this report will tell you, well, based on your transactions, we estimate that S/4HANA is going to be good for you, especially, for instance, the supply chain area. There's tons of details, and it shows you where it's going to have an impact, what are the potential benefits, how to measure those, what is relevant. So it's an extremely interesting report that you can get from SAP. But that requires the workflow analysis. This is why I detailed it. So we have a lot of, we started this series called Starting Small that is going to guide you through the transaction app, the business scenarios, and the Fiori library, which is the last one. So I was showing you earlier the Fiori library. If you go back to the home, there's a new button that's available called Get SAP Fiori App Recommendations. And I don't think a lot of people know about it. But what it does is it's very similar. Come on. So exactly, yeah. So I think I had one that's available here. So it's taking your usage profile, which is the workflow analysis, and asking you what system you're running today and what's your target system. So this one is interesting because it's not just for S/4HANA. You can also call Suite on HANA. And it's telling you, based on those criteria, what are the applications that are relevant for you. So it looks like I should be using the clear outgoing payment transaction. Okay, and it's giving me details about that transaction, what's good for me, what transaction it's replacing. So very useful thing. I think it's relatively recent. At least I just noticed it very recently. So interesting one here for you as well. Business functions, we're working on doing something better here, but you have to know that your business functions that are in SFW5, there was a way for SAP to deliver new functionality inside the enhancement pack and only activate what you needed. Well, so if you activated some of them are actually not compatible with S/4HANA. There's about 10% of them. And the question is, which ones, right? Well, this is all in the simplification list and those two nodes. We're working on a better way to get there, but you just need to be aware that this is something you need to take into account. The big surprise we had was the big part of the project for S/4HANA is not really technical, but it's this customer vendor integration. If you were going to S/4HANA 1503 or 1605, it's not mandatory. But if you're going to 1511 or 1610, it is mandatory. And what it means is you're merging your business partner, your customer and supplier as a business partner. What is critical is that actually this is touching all master data in your ERP system, but also the satellite ERP systems and also the integration with other systems. So for instance, your SRM, Enterprise Royalty Management, BW, APO, and supplier relationship management systems, all of those could be impacted by changing of master data. If my customer 1,000 becomes 200,000, of course, there's going to be some changes there. And especially integration with third-party applications, very critical. So you need to consider these in your evaluation, and you also need to consider your deployment options. If you have an on-premise license and you want to host it in a private cloud, your main options today are SAP, Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, Google Platform. Bluefin is actually certified in the 4 of them, so that's, I believe, the only one, or if not one of the only ones, to have all of them available for you. And we have, for instance, the project we're delivering in 2 weeks is based on Amazon Web Service. We had a lot of great options for some. Basically, in hours, we were ready to get started with the sandbox. It was very impressive. Now, compatibility mode. I'm going to let you in a little secret here that we discovered with pharmaceutical company. You probably know that there's a technical compatibility mode. So when SAP introduced the Universal Journal, a lot of tables were merged together, right? And they were replaced with views so that your coding stays the same. This is why you might need some called code remediation. That's a technical compatibility mode. However, there's a functional one. Little quiz for you. There's two screens here. Can you spot the difference? I'm going to give you 5 seconds because the answer is it's very hard to spot the difference. I think the only one I found is that there's a column here which is W that's not available here, but more or less it's the same screen, right? Well, what you may not know is that actually one of them is 6-10, the other one is the ERP6. What that means is that I can still use the SAP GUI with S4HANA. I know that SAP is pushing a lot for the Fiori, and that makes a lot of sense. Those are really good apps. But if, like this pharmaceutical company, you want to bite the bullet and migrate to S4HANA without or with minimal user interface changes, you can use S4HANA with the GUI, and then gradually later on roll out Fiori Apps as you see fit. So that's something that SAP doesn't advertise too much because they want people to focus on Fiori, and rightly so, but it's an option that not everybody knows about. Okay, so we have all of those components, and how do we put together? So I have created a white paper called S4HANA Migration, Greenfield, Brownfield phase, where we look at data migration, custom code remediation, architecture complexity, changes to business model in order to evaluate also the conversion effort. And it gives you this map where this is where I start, and this is what I have to go through to evaluate, should I go Greenfield, Brownfield, or maybe a phased approach, potentially with central finance. The document is available. I have a link later on in the presentation and the final slide, but it's something that you definitely should download because I believe it's useful. And now, of course, what you could do with us is the suitability analysis, which is the 4 to 8 weeks workshop, where we look at everything we've been talking about, plus the technical side as well. Let's not forget that, which is data volume management. How do we remove unwanted data, basically start archiving. The customer in Texas, the oil and gas company, had significant benefit from this. Architecture and sizing, the same customer was looking at very expensive hardware, and we found a way to use more affordable hardware for them to justify this. We have developed a lot of tools to go faster, and then kind of also make recommendations to some organization. That was especially the case for the beverage company near Boston. So at the end of this project, you will have an ERP strategy. For instance, we don't have versus S4HANA. We have all the roadmaps, the project plan, the architecture, what you can do today, some of the custom code analysis, the plan to get there, best practices, and everything related to testing. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. It just would be about 500 pages at the end of it. It's very, very interesting. Next, what can you do? Basically, the question is, what can you do today, right? So what I, again, highly recommend is the Discovery Workshop. Get in touch, and then we'll be able to work with you and get started. It's free, so why not spend half a day with us and see what we can do for you. What you can also do today, I was showing you this workload analysis. You can do that, and this is a seed for a lot of other things I was showing you. And this is a link to the Greenfield, Brownfield paper that you will receive with this presentation. Here's the link. With that in mind, I think you can now enter questions. There's a question box. Chloe, can you help us with that?
Absolutely. So there's a question panel in your control panel, and you just pop your question in there, and that will alert me. So if you have anything, please do write it in there now. Okay, we have one here. Julian, how do I register for a discovery workshop?
That's a great question. I think we need a form for that. But basically, just reach out to us. There's this. My email is here. You can also reach by phone. We will also be actually at some conferences. So in the UK, we have the Analytics Symposium. We will be there. So don't hesitate to come and see us if you're there. I will be at Sapphire. We can also actually set up meetings to to talk if you're there or some of your people in your organizations are there, and we can get started and set that up for you. But I mean, the best way is just email.
That's great, thank you. Another question here. How can I check if an industry solution is fully implemented?
Okay, yeah, so we talked about that, and actually it's funny you asked, because we were yesterday at a customer in LA, and we talked about IS Media. And IS Media is a lot of things, and the customer wasn't convinced that the key things for them were available. So what we did is went just into this roadmap, go to media. So the key for them was the media production management tool. So we looked into here, and so those are the modules that are available. You can see media production management, and you can see in this slide here what is available in there. So media production management is available, so that's good for them. But if they wanted to do omni-channel commerce, it looks like it's not fully ready yet. So very interesting to look into. Again, as I said earlier, this is a case-by-case management, and you have to go into those details to figure out, is it ready for me or not? And then you can see if it's not, then future direction, when is it going to be ready?
That's great, thank you. One more question here. We have pressure to implement new SAP cloud solutions such as SuccessFactors, but feel we should convert our ERP system to S/4HANA first to upgrade the engine, so to speak, given the integration will still be required. Would you recommend that approach, or are there any key dependencies or considerations to be aware of?
Okay, so this is where we need to sit down together and see all of those options. But SuccessFactors is independent from your ERP, so you could really go and implement your SuccessFactors without changing. There's a lot of integrations and projects we've seen with SuccessFactors and just the ERP. The question is really, what are the benefits you're looking for into SuccessFactors, and why do you feel that you need to upgrade? But you can have SuccessFactors with your current ERP. So yeah, let's sit down together and see what I'm missing here, maybe. But you can.
Brilliant, we can follow that up later. And one last question here. I understand one of the game changers in S/4HANA is S/4HANA being a decision support based system based on exception management. Can you throw some light on that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think there's some slight misconception there. So the key is that inside the Fiori Apps, the SAP has integrated your transactions with the operations reporting. So, for instance, one of the applications that we activated for this customer in the UK was everything related to purchase order. So you have a real-time list of purchase orders, and you can take care of the ones that really need. So the ones that will be the one that where will be disrupted, right? So we were doing an evaluation 2 weeks ago for a customer in Ohio, had the same type of logistics issues. So the application does that. However, I want to do a little caveat here. If you need non-SAP data, so maybe at not an operational level, but more as a strategic level, then you still probably want to evaluate a BW option, because you might have to merge SAP with non-SAP data. For instance, I still see a lot of customers doing planning outside SAP. I'm not talking about BPC, but for instance, Hyperion, Cognos, and those applications. How do you get those information back? Not everybody has done that integration correctly into the act.p table so that it's back into the system. So, it's not one thing, right? Reporting is not one thing, and decision management is not one thing. So I think it depends on what type of decisions you're trying to go through there. I hope that makes sense.
Well, thank you, Julian. And as Julian said, we will be sending out the recording of the webinar to you after this, so you'll be able to see all of the slides and all of the links to external content. If you are interested in booking a discovery workshop with us, you can reply to the email that we'll send out to you and just request that. You can also follow a link on our website, and you'll see that you can enter your details there, and that will also submit a form to us that shows you requested a workshop. Some further reading there for you, all available on our website, and will be sent to you, as I said, in the slides following, and that will be sent out to you straight away. So thank you very much for joining, everyone. I hope you found it useful, and we'll get those slides out to you ASAP.
Thank you, Chloe.
Thanks, Julian.
Okay, bye.